Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our talk, Engineering, Product, and UX in Agile Trinity with Justine Benoit. Justine is a UX professional with experience in the federal intelligence community, as well as commercial industries like gaming and AI technology. She cares deeply about people, design processes, and creating meaningful impact with her craft. She leans in with user-centered design and outside-in design approaches, builds design thinking principles and methods, bridging the gap between user needs and business goals through thoughtful designs and compelling experiences. Justine is UX certified by the Nielsen Norman Group with a specialty in UX management, and she is also a member of Design Ops Assembly and the Interaction Design Foundation. Everyone, please welcome Justine.
Hey, thank you so much for the warm welcome, Eliza. Hello, everyone. My name is Justine. Thank you for joining me in this afternoon's talk on engineering, product, and UX in Agile Trinity. So, a little introduction. So, we'll start with a little bit about me. I'm Justine. I'm a UX designer at Deloitte, and I'm an immigrant. I was born and raised in the Philippines, and I moved to the States when I was 18. I'm a mom. I have 2 little dogs and a tiny human that I created in collaboration with my husband. And fun fact, I used to work backstage at Cirque du Soleil before I became a UX professional. But enough about me. I would like to learn about you as well. So let's go ahead and take a moment and share in the chat what it is that you do and where are you from? Oh my gosh. Okay, we have engineering leadership from New York. Yep. Ooh, Italy, Canada, Raleigh, North Carolina. So we have a lot of engineers here. That's really cool. Like engineers from everywhere. Ooh, I see we have a UX designer from Austin. Yeah, this is really cool. I love seeing the diversity in our crowd today. So yeah, that's really great to see. Now, I'd like to take another moment here and ask everyone, what are some of the biggest challenges that you currently face in your product or project team? And hey, we have our first participant typing. It's nice to see we have more people coming in. All right, looks like the link is working. Oh, Terry, I'm an engineer, but I took a human-computer interaction class recently, and I really enjoyed learning about UX. Yeah, it's fun. I love seeing more and more engineers getting interested in that human-centered design approach into coming up with solutions. So, okay, we're seeing responses being gathered here. Schedules and time, the disconnect between engineering and product expectation, handoff, accessibility, communicate with marketing team about the product. Yeah. Unexpected tasks popping up. Yes, I feel that in my bones. Understanding, communicating capacity due dates. Yeah, so as we watch these words kind of gather, right? It looks like communication, you can see communication is like big. So even though we all come from different organizations, different product teams, different industries, different roles even, we all kind of share a lot of challenges, right? Like we're all sharing, we all are facing very similar challenges in our daily jobs. So what I'm hoping at the end of this talk is that tomorrow, when everybody goes back to work, we'll all have the knowledge, the skills, and the techniques and tools so that you can help transform your team from a product team into an empowered team so you can create better outcomes and in turn be able to create a meaningful impact with your craft. And so today's journey, we're going to start by defining what an empowered team is. And then we're going to go ahead and get an understanding of establishing clear roles and responsibilities. And then after that, we're going to see how that empowered partnership looks like. And finally, we're going to go explore and see that the holy trinity of product in action, specifically in an agile environment. So the definition of an empowered team. What is an empowered team? Marty Kagan, who is the product leader and founder of Silicon Valley Product Group, he writes in his books Inspired and Empowered and describes an empowered team as one that's not just assigned problems to solve, but one that's entrusted to drive the solutions to these problems. So what does that mean exactly? It means rather than a product team kind of just being given features by leadership to develop, right? Like, I want this, and that. An empowered team is given goals and business goals and outcomes. They are given metrics by leadership. Like, these are the goals and outcomes we want in order to be successful. And they are empowering the team to decide and to really take ownership and drive. Like, what are the solutions? What are the action items? What are the things that need to happen in order to accomplish these goals and these outcomes that we've been provided with by our leadership? So what separates an empowered team from a product team? With a product team, they're output driven and they're working to deliver on features for the sake of doing so, or because they were told to do so. So then accountability is low because they're just, right, like they're just given things to do. They're just given things to, you're building because you're either told to build this or or just simply because you can. And there's not really a whole lot of meaningful purpose behind it. And it suddenly feels, I don't know if you've experienced this, but it suddenly feels like a factory line where you go, do, done, did my job, whoop, done. And it just becomes monotonous and you kind of start losing energy and inspiration for doing your job. Now, on the other hand, an empowered team is outcome driven. They're focused on problem solving. So what that is you have leadership. Like I shared earlier, leadership is giving the team these business goals and these ideal and expected outcomes. And the team has the ownership and the support and the trust to figure out how to accomplish these goals. And that's why accountability is high, because the team's not just responsible for the features or the output, but most importantly, they're responsible for and accountable for the outcomes of the product. So empowered teams, they are entrusted to take ownership of their craft and work in partnership to develop solutions and deliver meaningful outcomes. And now that we have an understanding of what an empowered team is, let's go ahead and explore what it means to have clear roles and responsibilities within the different areas of the product team. One of my favorite quotes and things that I live by is from Brene Brown, and that is, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. And to me, that means there's transparency, honesty, clear and constant communication amongst the team members. No one is left out of the loop. Everyone is informed. Nothing is hidden in secret. And you also provide each other a safe space for vulnerability. You have those difficult conversations, and it's okay. You continue to support each other. So by establishing clearly defined roles, this enables for everyone in the team, both individual and collective accountability for risk. And what that means is, you have this mitigates, because everyone has ownership of their areas of the product and everyone has a clear understanding of that. There's ownership, there's accountability. It mitigates the risk of overlooking things, and it mitigates the risk of, oh, I was going to do that. No, I thought you were going to do that. That kind of, at some point, maybe some of us have had this experience of either butting heads over who does what, and then having clashing of solutions or unnecessary redundancy on things. But that's why we establish these clearly defined roles and responsibilities and accountability and ownership of your area of the product. And so let's go ahead and break this down from PM, UX, and engineering. Our PM, their role is to take lead on the products or solutions viability. So they're there to help the team understand business goals and requirements. They're responsible for leading the strategy and delivering viable solutions that deliver value to the people and the business. And they're accountable for things like business strategy, economics, prioritization, and risk management. Then we move to our UX lead, who also overlooks the UX research. And you also have your UI designers and visual designers included in this. Their role is to take lead on the desirability and usability of the product or solution. They're there to bridge the gap between business goals and user needs. They're responsible for leading the creation of compelling and thoughtful solutions that would deliver value to both the people and the business. And so they are accountable for things like UX research, interaction design, service design, visual design, so on and so forth. And finally, our engineering lead. Their role is to take lead on the feasibility of the product or solution. They're there to ensure that the team has the right technology, tools, and talent to deliver and reliably maintain our design solutions. They're responsible for leading the development and execution of solutions that deliver value to people and the business, making them accountable for things like technical discovery, engineering solutions, and product development. And now that we have established everyone's roles and responsibilities, let's see how this looks as an empowered partnership. From discovery to delivery, an empowered team works in partnership throughout the product's life cycle. What we see here is we're following the double diamond model, where we have phases from the discovery phase, the define phase, development phase, and the delivery phase. And remember, this isn't an agile environment, so we iterate, right? But more on agile later. When we're in the discovery phase, and I may remind everyone too, everybody is involved in each phase. So when we start with the discovery phase, this is where the kickoff meeting happens with stakeholders and leadership, and you have PM in there, and you have your engineering lead and your design leads in that room. This is the time to gather information in order to really understand not just the business goals, but also the problems and challenges being encountered by your target users within the context and environment that they would be using this product. And then engineering to do things like discovery or technical discovery so they can find out what technologies are available and accessible to us in order to deliver on these solutions. And so we take that information that we've gathered and take it to the define phase. And this is where we start really defining, if you will, defining what the challenges really are. And this is where you start writing your user stories, right? Because we're doing this in a human-centered design approach too, or outside-in approach. So we always write our goals, our outcomes, our user stories from the perspective of the user. And then we do what I like to do is a story mapping workshop together, right? PM, engineering, design, to look at these product features or product areas and the clearly defined user stories. And then together identify and prioritize areas of the product that are going to bring the most value to the business, are going to be the most meaningful and valuable to our users, and also going to be the most feasible for engineering teams to build and deliver on. And then, so we take that and we go to our development phase. And this is where we start really getting to the fun, nitty-gritty stuff, where you have the design team in collaboration with the engineering team coming up with solutions, right? Like you have your designers doing the wireframes. You have designers working with engineers to talk about like, hey, okay, what's our tech stack? What UI libraries can we use? What other libraries can we use based on these solutions that we're coming up with? And then also with PM and UX, looking into possibly collaborating with marketing to have a go-to-market strategy. It's one of the things that PM and UX could do together, and also making sure that the solutions that the design and engineering teams come up with are going to be viable for this MVP. And then, of course, that's where you have engineering and design working to build your prototypes. And then once you have that, you take it to the delivery stage, where you conduct either an A/B testing or usability testing. And it's important to remember that this usability testing should not be siloed within just the design or research team. You want to have representation from PM and engineering so that they can see the product through the lens or the perspective of our end users. And so that helps everybody in the team when we come back and synthesize our findings from these tests. Then everybody has a say and, just a diverse perspective and diverse solutioning for these problems that were, or areas of improvement that were found through those testings. And so with that, it's same thing, kind of similar to the define phase, right? Before launching this MVP out to market, we sit together and we prioritize, okay, these are the areas of improvement that we found through testing, and these are the low-hanging fruits that we can deliver within the time constraints that we have. And then, of course, we have to remember once that product is out in the world for people to view, the journey doesn't stop there, right? Remember those metrics and KPIs that were provided to us by leadership earlier on, we take that and we use that to measure, gather feedback from our users on the product that we just released. And then we go back to that cycle, right? We iterate together. We go through this cycle together. So now we can kind of go ahead and see what the holy trinity of product looks like in action in an agile environment. But first, let's take a moment here. I am curious, what does everyone think, or to you, what is your definition of agile? Let's take a moment here in the chat, and I'd like to see what are everyone's perspective or definition of agile is. And it doesn't have to be a full paragraph. You can just throw in like keywords and stuff that make you think of working in an agile environment. Ability to adapt change. All right. Iterating, project management methodology. Agile is revisiting goals regularly. Cycle, flexible, doing what works best for the team. Flexibility, a lot of flexibility, yes. Iterative, responding to change well. Evolution, able to pivot as needed. Continuous deliverables. Like Scrum, but your well-being on the project. Yep. All right. Can make changes as needed. Yeah. Continuously evolving. Non-linearity. Statuses of tasks clearly documented. Yeah, so everything that you all have shared in the chat is true about Agile. And what we understand a lot about Agile too, right? It's iterative, it's quick, and it needs to be flexible, you need to be adaptable. But sometimes too, it feels like some of it gets a little bit lost in translation, right? And maybe some of us have experienced this where the product team is just so focused on, get it out the door in one sprint, kind of just, let's just get this one feature at a time. Every sprint, let's get this feature out, without really putting too much thought into, well, what happens after we've moved that ticket over on our board? So what does it mean to be an Agile team? Laura Klein, who's a principal at Users Know, she's also the author of Build Better Products and UX for Lean Startups. And she's also actually an instructor at the Interaction Design Foundation. She has a course there on designing in an Agile, I think it was like integrating UX or Agile in UX design, something like that. It's a really good course. I highly recommend it. But in her course, she basically describes an Agile team as a single cross-functional team that's working together, taking complete ownership of their area of the product to produce better outcomes for users and the business. And what that means too is you're not just working together to deliver a product, to deliver features out the door. There will be, again, like Agile is like, if you think about the Agile Manifesto, right? It's, in a way, it is right. It is true that we're delivering products efficiently and quickly, and sometimes you do have to deliver products that, knowing they're not perfect, but also remembering that we're sending this out to the world for people to see and use, so we can gather feedback from them. And then we can take that information and use that to inform the improvements that we're going to make on this product. So Agile teams. Agile teams are cross-functional. These cross-functional teams have an advantage over siloed teams because they don't really need to solely rely on handoffs and documentation, right? Like we were talking about earlier, the whole factory line of boop, boop, did my part, here you go. Just the worst way to handle handoffs because things get lost in translation. And while documentation is important because they work in partnership, this Agile team doesn't need to rely so much on that documentation, allowing them to work more efficiently, much faster, and effectively. And then Agile teams, they work autonomously. Autonomous teams, they're handed outcomes rather than outputs. And like we said earlier, right, they're trusted by leadership to drive the decisions to meet these specific metrics and key performance indicators or KPIs that were given to them. And so an autonomous team can produce better outcomes because team members are empowered and supported to find solutions that deliver what users in the business really need. Third is that Agile teams, we iterate, right? Agile teams iterate. Teams that are truly committed to Agile methodologies iterate and work to improve their user experience and code base constantly. And like we mentioned earlier, right, they might ship something imperfect, but understanding it's being shipped so they can gather feedback and learn something from that feedback. And then they can go back and improve the product based on what they learn from that. And it's a cycle, rinse and repeat. And finally, Agile teams enable excellent communication. Teams that clearly and constantly communicate are more likely to address problems and identify solutions because they're working in close partnership. Nothing gets lost in translation, nothing gets overlooked, or at least that's the likelihood of that is mitigated because everyone is informed, everyone is communicated to clearly, and everyone is in the loop, from research to ideation to development, so on and so forth. Everyone is involved, and that's what keeps the team ahead of the game. So before we close out, I'd like to share a little case study. It's actually from one of the projects that I had recently worked on. And so it was to build an MVP. When I started, the project had already ran for a couple months, and there was no designer. It was a very engineering-driven team, and it was a very, there was no human-centered design process whatsoever. And they were kind of just building out pages and features. And it felt like the team was doing a lot of work, but not exactly moving forward. And then one of the problems too is that they were cross-functional, right? Even when I got onboarded as a designer, we had PM, we had engineering, we had design, but we were working in silos. So again, things were getting lost in translation. And because the solutions are kind of single perspective, there's not a whole lot of diversity in throwing ideas on the table, it wasn't efficient, it wasn't effective. So progress was slow, and honestly, inspiration and morale was starting to dwindle down. So what we did as a team was to get together and talk about okay, we as a team, what are the challenges we know that we're having a problem moving forward effectively and efficiently. So what are things that we as a team, what are the challenges that we're facing right now? What are things that we're doing together that's not working? And then what are the things that we can start doing together as a team that will help us improve the way we're doing things. And so we share our solution, this idea to leadership and say, hey, let's try this out. This is a problem. We're not moving forward as well as we would like to. And so we see an opportunity to improve the way we're doing things in order to deliver more efficiently and effectively. We'd like to try doing things this way. So with that, leadership started giving more trust in the team to own our craft. And we were given more support to the PM, engineering and UX leads, to really drive the product's direction. And we start seeing the Trinity working in partnership rather than in silos, focusing on outcomes rather than outputs and features. And so at the end of I think it was 4 months or something, the outcome was that we had an MVP. We demoed it to stakeholders and leadership. Our team received great feedback after the demo. And so our project was given more funding to continue building out this MVP, allowing us to really deliver on a solid MVP to market. So yeah, that's my story. That is the product Trinity in Agile action. Let's go ahead. I'd like to take a few moments here for everyone to ask me anything. Go ahead, throw it in the chat if you have any questions for me.
Thank you, Justine, for presenting on this amazing presentation on engineering, product, and UX and Agile Trinity. I feel like I really learned a lot on this topic from you. And this was really amazing, and I'm sure the audience learned so much too. So for everyone attending, please feel free to share any questions you have for Justine in the chat. And I guess while everyone's sharing their questions, Justine, would you have any suggestions for resources you can recommend for someone who's a beginner learning about UX, or their company is waterfall transitioning to Agile?
So I highly recommend the Interaction Design Foundation. They have a breadth of courses for anyone. You don't have to be an experienced UX professional, but they have a breadth of courses there. It's like an annual membership, and you can take as many courses at your own time. And yeah, like I said, the one with Laura Klein on Agile methodologies for design, which I think is really valuable too. That's one good course. And then Nielsen Norman Group is another great one. Although I think between Interaction Design and Nielsen Norman Group, Interaction Design Foundation is more affordable. Nielsen Norman Group gets pretty intense and expensive. But those are great resources. I would say the Holy Grail / Holy Bible of design is The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. I highly recommend that as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate sharing those resources. A question we have from Kyra. Do you have any suggestions for when questions arise during development phase, the increased level of effort for each role beyond their original expectations? Kyra's saying, as an engineer, they feel that sometimes, they're actively working on deadline, but they're gradually identifying blocking issues where product or UX need to make further decisions.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when questions arise during the development phase, I guess I'm going to need a little bit more context on this question, because I want to understand too, why this is like scope creep, right? You're in development of something and someone asks you, hey, it would be cool if we could do this, and that too. And you're like, I don't know. But I think the best way to approach this is, right, so let's say someone says was like, oh, that's really cool, but would it be cooler if we can add this, and that? and you say, yes, I see that these are capabilities you'd like to include on this feature. However, given our timeline and our technological constraints, we're going to have to deprioritize those capabilities for a future build or future iteration. So just something like that, like just explain to them that I see you want that. Let me put that in my back pocket. Right now, this is the scope of what we're looking to deliver. So we want to focus on this because we want to deliver this well.
Right, recognizing the trade-offs. What are
Yeah.
the prioritizing? Reaching out to your Scrum Master, maybe. Yeah. Another question we have from Sonu. So their question is how to break through in the UX industry without any prior experience.
Okay, this I can empathize with because I worked backstage at Cirque du Soleil before becoming a UX practitioner. I never really had any like formal education in UX other than just being like super scrappy for like a couple years. I think it's important to, like for me, it was I established and developed a habit of learning something new every day. And then it's also, and like things like I mean, I'm going to look at this from like a recruiting perspective also, where things that people tend to look for are having a robust portfolio, having a resume that shows experience of design, and not just design but also that whole process of if you're interested in research and all that stuff. And then being able to there are boot camps out there. Personally, some of them I think are to an extent are valuable, but I think it's really important, and I think what's going to separate you from boot camp graduates is when you're able to communicate design decisions that connect with business goals, like seeing that the business side, and then also having empathy and having a very basic understanding, at least a basic understanding of code, right? Like whether it be Angular, React, JavaScript, like just being familiar with that helps you become a marketable UX practitioner because you're not just siloed into the design world. You understand why we make design decisions because we want, like, there's a business goal that we're looking to achieve, but you also understand, and you can kind of visualize like, okay, this is a solution that I have in mind, and I can share this with the engineer and we can work together on finding the best way to solve this problem. But yeah, I can talk all day on how to break through in the UX industry without any prior experience. But Sonu, if I'm saying your name correctly, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to talk further on that. I think it's really important that, I guess one more piece of advice for like, especially your portfolio, and when you get into the interviewing process, is your story is super important. So when you talk about your case studies in your portfolio, don't just flood the page with screenshots or wireframes or beautiful, I don't know, Figma stuff. Because yes, they're beautiful and compelling, but it doesn't tell a story. It's much more valuable to show your process, right? Like what motivated and inspired this project? What were the actions that you took, and what kind of research did you do that informed these design decisions, and then most importantly, what was the outcome of that design? And another tip too, I think it's really, and which is I think in a way what helped me too, is reach out. So two things that are good case studies for your portfolio. One is to reach out to a local business, like a little mom and pop shop, and offer to redesign their website. And then two is to reach out to a nonprofit and same thing, offer to redesign their website, because that shows people who are hiring, when we see that those case studies and also in your resume, we're going to think that, oh, this is a person who genuinely cares about their community. Like there's heart, there's thoughtfulness into doing these projects. So yeah, that's my breakthrough into the UX.
No, this is amazing. Thank you so much, Justine. Really appreciate answering all these questions and for having the session today. Just want to add, I'm Eliza, Leadership Fellow Women Who Code Python. And just wrapping up, everyone, please give a round of applause or applause emojis for Justine for this amazing talk presentation. We look forward to seeing you again, Justine. Thank you so much.